to the last, the last portion of our time here together at the Task Management and Time Blocking Virtual Conference 2021. My name is Francis Wade, in case you're just logging in for the first time. And today we're going to be featuring a Q&A moderated by Ami Devereaux and featuring two of our speakers, Amanda Tento and Penny Zenker. And following the Q&A, we'll be doing a closing session, which will start at about 6 o'clock. So this Q&A will run for an hour, a little under an hour, and then end at 6 o'clock. We'll be doing a couple exercises to close out the evening and then go into a open networking session, which basically is an open-ended, hanging out at the bar kind of thing, the kind of thing you would do at a real conference, just without the liquor and without being in person. So let's get going. I'm going to bring the Ami and the speakers up to the stage. Okay, here we go.
Hi, Princess.
Hi, Amanda.
How are you?
Oops, I think you're muted. Hi, Ami.
I hear. Hey. I hear Amanda.
Ami is muted as well.
I am. I'm not muted at my end.
I'm not muted at my end.
It's me.
Thinking it is. Aha, the headphone thing. He told me to wear headphones. So if I have terrible feedback, it's because I don't have headphones.
I
think you're okay.
Okay, good.
Let's get Penny up.
Where's Penny? She's in the conference hall. I saw her.
Yeah, I brought her up on stage, so she should be. I think she just hit refresh. Yep. So she'll be with us in just a minute. Okay, there she is. She hit refresh. And this would be very curious because she was, oh, here we go. There we go, Penny.
I don't know what happened.
Ami, over to you.
Wow, everybody has these cool virtual backgrounds. I feel very pedestrian having just like my office. So if my dog or cat wanders in, y'all just include it. They're generally pretty courteous. Okay, so welcome to this session with Amanda and Penny. And both of you, thank you so much for attending and doing a Q&A. And I did watch both of your videos, but I'm really looking forward to you debriefing everybody on your areas of focus and on the presentations that you did. So I'm not going to introduce myself. Everybody who wants to know who I am can quite easily find it somewhere on here or Google me or whatever. So let me start with you, Amanda. If you would take 5 to 10 minutes, and I will be watching the clock, so I want to make sure we have plenty of time for questions and dialogue. Amanda, if you would just give us a brief-ish overview of your presentation, because let's assume that lots of people here haven't had time to watch all of them yet. And with that said, go.
Awesome. Thank you, Ami. I am Amanda Tento, and I am a busy mother of 3. I own Google My Business marketing agency. Last year during the pandemic, I finished my degree, schooled my 2 children, and well, I have 3 kids, but cyber schooled 2 of them. And then we also moved across the country 3,000 miles and during a pandemic and bought a house sight unseen. So last year was a crazy year. It was super busy. And I think a lot of us, at least parents especially, have struggled during this pandemic to kind of balance all of those things. There's so much that goes on from, meal planning to cooking to doing all of the things that we have to do normally, plus having the kids at home cyber schooling. That is basically what my presentation is about. And I really wanted to give some insight into how I handle all of the things that I juggle. I juggle a lot of things. I was on a call the other day, Facebook Live, and it ended up getting 30 bookings from it. And it was just like, like, oh my goodness, what am I going to do now? Like, of course, they're over the course of like a month, but when you have something like that happen, you have to be able to have A, automations, and B, you have to be able to really balance that out and have time scheduled and blocked in your calendar where, like, you know what, someone can just go to my link and book that. And I think that's a really important part, or I know that's a really important part of, finding that balance as a parent and a business owner and being able to get everything done. So
let me ask you just to say a little bit more in terms of the actual content before we get into the weeds and before Penny gives us her summary. What are some of the tools that you use for automation, and how do you set them up so that you end up with the balance of people booking themselves into your calendar and your ability to make sure that whoever does book themselves into your calendar, you have the sort of cognitive space to focus on that at that moment rather than to be dragging along whatever you were thinking about last.
Yeah.
And I know that Penny also has thoughts on this, so we may have some redundancy in the points, but that's kind of the exciting thing about having both of you here. So go ahead.
Yeah, that is a really good question. And as far as technology goes, I think it's really important to be able to just send someone a link, like I said, have them go to your schedule and just book whenever is convenient for them. Even if someone sends me a message on Facebook and says, hey, I'd like to, talk to you about whatever, I'm like, okay, here's my link, because it's so hard to do that back and forth messaging thing. It takes too much time and I don't have that time. So
what do you use for that?
So I use Acuity, which is my favorite scheduling tool. I've tried Calendly, and I've also tried Dubsado, which is actually built into my CRM, but I don't love it. So I'm going to say Acuity is my favorite. You can set up so many things. One thing that if you have a zone of expertise that I highly recommend is to value your time. Set up a paid call, because if someone wants to talk to you for an hour, they need to be you need to be compensated, because that's an hour that you could have gotten something else done. And you really need to value your time and value everything that you do, as well as all of the things that you may do as a pro bono or courtesy, or just like a lead generation as well. So
that's an interesting point, and I have a question about that later, but I want to make sure that we just kind of get a little bit more about the substance of your talk. So I do recall you talking about Acuity, and I thought that was really awesome. I went and looked at Acuity, and I couldn't quite figure out how to get past one kind of appointment with one kind of value. It seemed like I needed to commit to the whole thing before I could really understand how it works. Am I doing it wrong? Which is very likely.
I think they used to let you have 3 different types of appointments on the free plan, I think. So
I'm doing it wrong.
Okay. You can add 2 more. But after that, you have to be on the paid plan. I think it's like $15 a month or something.
It wasn't the money. I'm not buying anything until I understand if it works.
Oh, yeah.
But anyway, you can share more about that in a second. Thank you so much. And I know you have tons more. So let me get Penny to give us her summary, and then we'll kind of get into this a little bit. And by the way, if you are listening to this, please start putting questions in the chat. I must tell you up front, I'm not all that great at juggling these different things, just not a skill set of mine. But if you put them in the chat, I will scroll through them as we get to the open Q&A. That said, Penny, why don't you go ahead and give us the kind of 5-10 minute overview, because you had a very rich presentation in terms of detail. So I'm hoping you can give us the 20,000 foot view.
Absolutely. Thank you. So my name is Penny Zenker, and I'm a Focusologist. And so I'm going to start there by explaining what is Focusology, since I made it up. but it should be a thing, right? It is really the art of controlling and directing the energy of your thoughts, your feelings, and your actions to produce a positive, meaningful outcome, or multiple positive, meaningful outcomes, right? So, and it goes with the whole topic that I'm talking about that I chose for the summit, which is to manage our performance, not our tasks. So many people get caught up in the nitty gritty, and they're so focused on time and the blocking, which are all fantastic. And you're learning so many great things here, but it's also important that we are able to step back and realize that not every task is created equal. And we have to follow that principle from Stephen Covey, which is, start with the end in mind. We need to know what our outcomes are so that we can align our tasks and our outcomes. So we really don't want to be managing our time or even managing our tasks. We want to be managing our outcomes. So that's the general gist of it, and a couple of highlights where I talked about living the 80-20 rule. So a lot of us know what it is, but the question is, are you really living it? Do you have a process in place to help you to live it on a day-to-day basis?
Wait, can you say a little bit more about what you mean by living it? Because my understanding of the Pareto principle is that it's an observation. And the observation is that most of the value is produced by the least work or the fewest people. And so how do you take that and live that? Like, does that mean you change what you're doing? You change what you focus on?
Yeah, it means you start with your outcome. What's your outcome? And what's the 20% that's going to get you 80% of the result? And you start there, because right there, it makes it so much easier if you know what to focus on, that you're not like scrambling on those 80% things and then you never have time for the 20% things. The most important things, you need to get really crystal clear on what are the, everybody has different language for it. I think Traction calls it the big rocks, or maybe Stephen Covey uses the rock thing too. But it's those things that are your levers, and getting clear on what they are. And I tell a little bit of a story of how it sort of hit me in the head, because we all, I use Mike Tyson's quote, everybody's got a plan until we get punched in the face.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a little bit like the way everybody feels with the pandemic. So we have to have a plan, but we also have to have a reset process. And this is, the 80-20 rule. If we live it, it's our reset process to constantly step back and be reevaluating.
So
in my session, just one quick thing, and then I'm done.
Go
In my
ahead.
session, I talk about the 10 core drivers, which if we step back and really look at all of what makes us productive in the areas of mindset, in the areas of strategy, and in the areas of sustainability, then it's a tool to help us to step back and evaluate where we are. So these, just sharing some of those tools is what I did in the session to be more.
So let me ask you a question about that, because many of the people who are attending here are many of them have regular jobs. They're not entrepreneurs like we are. Mm-hmm. And many of the entrepreneurs, by the way, including me, like I don't have a staff. I outsource a bunch of stuff to contractors, but I don't have a staff. Sure. If you don't have a staff and you don't have the resources to handle that 80%, how do you, sorry, he's generally courteous.
He's resisting. I feel the resistance from him.
No, somebody else is getting a walk, and that just is not on. So anyway, pardon? Anyway, what I was saying is, it seemed like one way of thinking about just to put this in very pedestrian terms, is you're saying prioritize those things for which you get the biggest bang for your buck, if you will. But Absolutely. It still leaves people like us, or like me, or like, I don't know about you, Amanda, but like many people in this conference, with the question of how do you get that other 80% done? How does that not take you right back to managing your tasks and your time?
Well, so here's the thing, is when you're clear on what that 20% is, Amanda talked about automation. There's plenty of things that we do that could be automated and that are small routine little things. So when she sends out her calendar link, that saves all that back and forth time. So that's one area, right? So that's one way is to look to automate some of those things that aren't the 20%. You're going to be able to delegate them, and we have to get away. And I don't have a staff either. I outsource things to individual VAs or experts, but I outsource it.
Right.
So we have to get past the story in our head that there's no one who can do this for me. So because even if you work for a corporation and you have, you know, a boss and an organizational structure to be within, who said you can't get a VA for $7 an hour from the Philippines to do a couple of little things for you? Would it?
Nobody's listening from the Philippines.
And I'm sorry, I don't mean that in any. It's a great resource. They speak English. I work with a lot of great people from there. Could be from anywhere in the world, right? It could be in your backyard. It could be a stay-at-home mom that wants to get a couple of extra hours of work, you know, and you know, that type of thing. Or it's a barter system. You trade. There are always ways to, but we get caught up in our stories. I have to do it myself, or I don't have the time. I don't have the money. We have to get past those stories. And when you're really clear on, hey, this thing gets me 80% of the way, then maybe it doesn't need to be done as good as you could do it. Maybe good enough is okay.
Okay, cool. So let me go back to you, Amanda. You were juggling children and school and cyber school and probably other family responsibilities, and then, you know, 30 bookings from one Facebook Live, which, by the way, I am like super awed. Great work, really impressive. So with all that going on, tell me a little bit about how you structure your days so as to be able to dedicate enough time to the kids and what they need, and also reserve the right amount of time for your automated systems in which people are booking them into your calendar. And as we discussed, especially because Penny's focus is on this, the shifting of your energies so that you are attending to something with the greatest amount of energy.
Yeah, those are all really great questions.
A lot of questions, I know, sorry.
So going back to the first one, which was how do you juggle all of those things, and like what does the day look like?
Like how do you must have a way that you parse your time, because the kids have school when they have school.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's not like you can decide, well, we're going to do school Sunday afternoon. I mean, you could do study then, but you can't do school then. So so there's that, which means there's specific time dedicated to that. But then the other piece of it is, although they're going to school, kids in cyber school cannot be free range. I've heard this from my other friends who are parents who are like, my kid is doing school in the same room as my office so that I can keep an eye on him and make sure he's not goofing off. So how do you balance those two?
So our cyber school happens to be really, really awesome in that I can monitor everything that they're doing from my desk. So my office is upstairs in a spare bedroom, and theirs is downstairs. They each have a desk in the dining room. And it's very, you know, they each have their own focus space. So that helps a lot. And we also have the tablet for the 3-year-old. So then that way she can, you know, do her little Homer app and, like, you know, learn her alphabet and her numbers and all that stuff. So I think definitely having designated times for sure. Like I get up and I take a walk and I get ready and I get, you know, breakfast and everything before they even get up. And then I wake them up and then I go to my office. And they get ready and get dressed and do all the things. They go down and eat their breakfast, and then they just jump on. They really like to get their work done early, so that way they have the rest of the day to play with their sister. So it's, you know, that part just works out. And I think family dynamics is definitely an important part of this, because not every family has 3 children that can just go play together, you know, like you're going to hear them in the background screaming. I'm sure you haven't already. They're playing right now, you know. So we're blessed that we have that dynamic. But even if you don't have that dynamic, trying to find those activities for them to be busy while you're working is important too. I would never be able to work with them in the room with me.
I know, I was amazed by that.
Yeah, I don't know.
Can you imagine having your son at a little desk next to you?
Yeah.
So let me ask you one further question, because I know, and you can hear my orientation is really toward all of us who have, or many of us who have probably been displaced. I wasn't. Maybe all three of us have worked from home the whole time, but certainly if you have children, you were not working at home with your kids right there. So for everybody, life has transformed to some extent, except me. And I'm wondering, it used to be that we kind of knew intuitively what everybody's day was like. They get up, they go to the gym, or they don't go to the gym, they have breakfast and they go to work. And then they're in their office for however long that is. And then they leave, and that's the schedule. And when you leave, you go to the gym, you go home, you eat dinner, whatever you do. Nobody has that schedule anymore, which means that for people in this space, in the time blocking and task management and productivity space, I think there's a great deal of curiosity about how people structure their day. Like, you guys have the same goal, but different ways of talking about your goals in mind. Where you, Penny, are really focused on the objective you want to deliver and on making sure that your energy and focus are on the right thing. And you, Amanda, are very focused on ensuring that you juggle all these things effectively and make sure that your automated systems maximize your time and money. I'm focused on different things, obviously. Given that, you told us a little bit about how your day is structured, Amanda. Penny, how do you structure your day? You're muted. There you go.
I hit it too many times. So, I just popped into the chat. The funny thing is, you said that many of us have been working from home, but we didn't have everybody else here, right? So it definitely, even though I'm used to working from home, it's still different, right? I don't have as much quiet, but I do have people to cook for me, which is really excellent.
Who's the cook in the family?
Well, my boyfriend cooks, which is awesome. And sometimes my kids cook too. So it's good because they know I'm not cooking for them. I'm like, hey, you weren't here before the pandemic. You're going to have to make it for yourself. Of course, my kids are older, right? They're 14 and 16 and they're very independent. So I'm in a very different place. But I did have kids that were young, and I do appreciate that challenge. And I used to set up my day like that too. And I set up my day now so that it works for me. So I always start my day. I think everybody should have a morning routine that gets them in the right state of mind, because it's, yes, I'm looking for the outcome, but it's still how I show up for that time that's going to maximize the time that I have, right? If I come into the time thinking, I hate doing this, well, it's going to take twice as long or 3 times as long. So I start my day in gratitude. I write in my gratitude journal. I look to get some exercise. So I go down and I listen to my podcast. That's my sort of time to do that while I'm working out. And then I try to, in the morning, I have the best energy. And that's when I'm great at creating content and doing that kind of stuff. So whether it's writing a blog, doing a project that required preparing for an event, those types of things. And then in the afternoons, that's when I get energy from other people. So that's when I have my client calls in the afternoon and do my podcast recordings and things like that. So cool. I think everybody needs to know what works best for them at what time.
Now, given that, I'm curious to know how you both, or if either of you, ensures that the working day doesn't bleed into the non-working day, or if in fact you make that distinction. So is there an end of the day, and how do you police that? Let's start with you, Amanda, and then we'll come back to you, Penny.
On my calendar, it says that I stop at 5, but the reality of being an entrepreneur is that's not going to happen every day. It just doesn't happen. There's some days where I have to finish something up. Like I have to get it done today because I've set a goal and I have to meet that goal. And, most of the time I can stick to that. Like I think yesterday I even stopped at like 4:30 or 4 or something. So if I can stop earlier, I will. But there's that in my calendar, it says, like, and my kids know that like from 5 to 6, we have what we call mommy time. So they each get 30 minutes alone with me in order to kind of, focus.
That's so cute. You have one-on-ones with your kids, like my clients have with their staff.
Yeah.
I love it. And every day besides, that's very serious cultivation. I like it. Great. And Penny, so I know you produce a lot of content and you don't have little children chasing you. So how do you make those demarcations?
So, I definitely tell other people they need to do that. And sometimes sometimes I don't do that as effectively, but I ability and freedom that my day brings. So, if I'm going to take some time during the day to go shopping, or, it's better to go to the supermarket when nobody's there and things like that. So then I might work a little bit later. Definitely the time where I look to stop is for dinner time. So again, I'm very lucky that I don't cook many nights. I have other people to cook, so I can work right up to when I need to. And then there's other days where I'll only work a half a day, or I'll take off, but it's been a very hectic time lately. And I'll say that I'm in a sprint where I'm working a little bit more. And so I'm working a little bit later than I would normally work.
And how do you instruct your clients? I know you said, Penny, you tell them all to have a hard cutoff. Amanda, I know you're working on marketing, aren't you? So let's talk a little bit about what you guys do, because unless you want to go straight back to the content of the conversation, but I think it's useful to know what your different focuses are in work. So Amanda, I know you're in marketing, and that's as much as I know. So, so what do you do for your clients?
Yeah, so I am a Google My Business expert and educator. So I basically help businesses, local and online-based businesses, to get into the top 3 in their, service area and their industry. Once they're in that top 3, that's when you get all of the phone calls, because we all know that we don't go to page 2 of Google for anything. So if you're one of those top 3 and you have good ratings, then you're going to be the person that gets all of the calls.
So what is the actual, I've actually invented a term called functional activity, which nobody's ever going to know except people who read me probably. But what is the actual activity that your non-phone call work consists of? What do you do?
So I have a VA that actually does a lot of the behind the scenes work for the Google My Business management portion. I will do the optimizations.
Which means what? For those of us who don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, so I'm going into a listing and basically overhauling all of their information. I'm geotagging their photos. I'm updating their locations. I'm making sure all their attributes are filled out. I'm really just making their listing the most effective that it can be, so they can show up on Google. So
it sounds like, because when I say functional activity, I mean something much more atomized than that. So it sounds like your work is pretty much focused work on a screen and doing almost what, if we translated it to a more sort of legacy industry, almost like an audit.
Yeah.
Is that accurate?
Yes, but I do also do free Google My Business audits as a source of lead generation.
But you don't change anything in those, right? So this is...
No, I just go over their profile and just kind of say, this is what needs to be changed, and, do a competitor audit and those kind of things. It's a short 15-minute call, but they're often, extremely fruitful.
Sure.
Outcome. So that is where I spend, I would say, most of my time. And it's more than 20%, but that's where the revenue generation comes from.
Well, I mean, that the reason I'm asking is because I think the nature of our actual functional activity, these atomic pieces of our work, really dictate what we need in the way of our time blocking and our task management. So for you, Penny, what are those atomic pieces of your work? What is the actual doing of, let's say, the morning and then the afternoon, because you parsed those out already?
Right. Well, I used to be primarily focused on public speaking. So I say used to be, you can imagine why that is. From the pandemic, from one day to the next, right? All events were canceled. So, so I have sort of 3 lines of business that I work in. So public speaking. So the actual things that I'm doing are preparing presentations, writing scripts, really reviewing, getting inspired. So I'm going out and reading other people's stuff and listening to stuff and just getting like in that mode. And all the things that I need to prepare for that event. So practicing it and so forth. And then I'm developing online courses and products. So that would be creating videos, and all the things that go into the text and the editing, and writing blogs for my site. So SEO can increase and things like that. And some of that I outsource, but videos, obviously I'm not outsourcing.
So let me just break this. Let me just break this down, because we talk. What's interesting is, as you listen to us, we talk in outcomes. We don't actually talk in those atomic pieces. So if you say I'm developing a blog, that's an outcome, because there is no such thing as developing a blog, right? There's doing research, writing sentences, editing sentences, putting in citations. So that, it sounds like that's the creator part of your work. And then what's the afternoon part when you're talking to clients?
So then I do strategic business coaching. So I took on more coaching clients so that I help them to grow their businesses. And it's funny, I do talk in, because that's what I presented on, is I talk in outcomes, right? So if I told you what I needed to do to go into the kitchen and make dinner, it might seem overwhelming if I talked to you about every atom, right? So it's important that people pick the level that works for them, I think. Some people love that individual detail, and I don't like to see that individual detail. Like if you give me a spreadsheet, all these colors on it and everything, like
I agree with you. I don't use any of that. But the reason I ask is because it's useful for people listening to be able to distinguish for themselves what it is they do. Like I make a very big distinction in my work between my focused creative work and my work with clients on the phone, when I am literally looking at nothing but an iPad Evernote and I'm staring into space on a Bluetooth, like I'm not even at my desk. And so, the way you structure that time, and as you sort of alluded to, Penny, the times of day that are most sort of when you're most optimized for certain work, like whether it's creative or strategic conversations, very different for different people. I'd love to just ask each of you if there's anything I haven't asked you about that you definitely want to comment on. And then I want to open the floor and take some questions from some of the other people here. So let me go to you, Amanda, and say, did I just completely overlook the most important thing, or just something important that you want to make sure we get?
I'd like to add in a little aside in that accomplishing huge goals, like I know many people during the pandemic have decided, like, I want to write a book, but where am I going to find the time to write a book? And finishing my degree, that was a whole big thing. Like I had to dedicate time to study. And no matter if you work from home, if you go to the office, if you go anywhere, you can do that, but you just have to do it in small chunks of time. So I really think that is the one thing that I was able to accomplish in 2020, is being able to designate 1 hour every day for 6 days a week, and just knock it out. And you can do that with anything. So that's one of the things that I really want to emphasize, is that if you just tell yourself, like, okay, set your alarm, it's time to get up. And if you're a morning person, that is, it's time to get up. And from 6 to 7, I'm going to do this. And then I'm going to go do my workout, whatever that is. I think that's a really important aspect of how I was able to do that in 2020. So
it sounds like so yes, I totally get that. But in order then for you to accomplish a long-term goal, you would have to be able to start from that goal then and kind of work backwards to figure out what are the component pieces, because maybe studying 1 hour a night isn't going to get you there if you have to write a dissertation or I remember doing that, and 1 hour a night would not have gotten me there, you know? So you have to do a lot of forward thinking and then a lot of backtracking thinking. It's a very, very useful point. Penny, what about you? What have I not asked you about? Because I know your presentation was like super rich, had a lot of stuff in it. I know I haven't touched on everything. So what do you think is really important for people to know?
Before I go to that, I just want to make a comment on what Amanda said, because that's how I wrote my book. My kids were young when I wrote my book, and I got up in the morning before they got up and I wrote. And then when they went to bed, I wrote. And you had to plan that time in, and it took 6 months, and I had support and everything. But I think it is important to work your way backwards and break it down into those smaller chunks.
I have a very funny story about how I wrote my book. I struggled over it forever. And at the time I was dating a guy who was a merchant marine, and merchant marines go out to sea for 75 days and then they come back for 75 days. And when he was in town, we kind of binged on all our time together. So when he went out for the next sprint, I said to him, I'm going to write the book while you're gone. So while he was at sea, I dedicated every minute that I would normally have spent in, you know, romance or coupledom or whatever you call it, to writing the book. And it got done in 75 days. So you're quite right.
Awesome.
You need to pinpoint the time and dedicate yourself into it. So what else was it that you want to make sure we get?
The only other thing is the concept that I bring from my book is a lot of people, there's a lot of talk about, you just focus on one thing, right? And I think Amanda would probably agree with this, as she's got, you know, 3 kids and she's got all these different things going on, is, you know, I think that's BS. Like, there is no one thing. We wear so many different hats. It's impossible to try to really break that down into one thing and everything else isn't important, right? We've got relationships.
I must have been like unconscious. Who says that? Like, who says?
Who was it that wrote that book, The One Thing?
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. I can't think of it off the top of my head, but
yeah, it's a thing. It's like inbox zero, right? Like, why would I give all my focus to getting my inbox to zero? Like, that's a minute.
Every time a client tells me about inbox zero, I'm like, hey, the first thing you're going to do is stop doing that. Like, that's ridiculous.
Exactly. Okay, so thank you.
Okay,
so Gary Keller wrote. Nothing against Gary Keller, but anyway,
we hate Gary Keller.
So no, we don't. We just appreciate that. That's one perspective. So my perspective is my concept of the productivity zone. If we look at it really simply, the productivity zone is a bell curve. It looks like a bell curve, but it's not a bell curve. It's just the shape, so that we have a framework. And it really just helps us to see that in the zone there is the productivity zone or the success zone. It's a high performance framework. And when we balance those things around our mindset and how we show up, and then the strategies, things like how we prioritize and how we plan for things and things like that, and how we make it sustainable and don't just like get that blip up and then let it go. So it's when we're working on any of those 10 drivers, it brings us back in the zone when we fall out, because falling out is over and under functioning, which means, in my language, perfectionism and procrastination. And it happens, right? We're human. Sure. We fall out of the zone. But we need to have some systems to be able to support us to step back and to see, what do I need to look at here to get me back in the zone? So that's why there's that framework that I share with people to see it that simply, and then to be able to use that as a tool.
So I'm really interested in this. Tell us, like, I get the kind of the concept, but walk us through a little bit about what it looks like. Just choose any project of yours or a client's or whatever to utilize that framework and to fall off and pull yourself back in. Like, in real terms. Make whatever you want.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of a situation. I mean, basically what I have people do with the framework is that they just, it's a method to step back on a regular basis. So whether they use it weekly or bi-weekly, so if they're coaching with me and we meet every week, then they'll take it every week and they'll kind of see where they are. You know, what's in the way. Are you planning every day so that you're looking at your goals and you're aligning your tasks and your goals? Where are you on a scale from 1 to 10? So there's an app that I have that they can just do sliders and do it really easily and identify sort of what's in the way. So it's just a quick overview to get the pulse of where they are in all of those 10 areas. So it's not like, let's say I have a client and he is very successful and everything is moving forward, but he's like, I don't know why, but my motivation has really slipped. And so he recognized through this process that he's procrastinating or he's not taking on some of the things the bigger things that he's wanted in the past. And he's trying to figure out, what's going on. So then we could focus on the motivation aspect. Or another client had some self-talk issues. So that's another one of the items, is that he realized that he didn't feel like he had the confidence that he needed to be his best in his position. So we could focus on that, right? So we're looking for the things that are in the way.
So the model is something like sort of a testing instrument or an assessment instrument that you utilize every day or every week to check yourself against these 10 different parameters?
Yeah, every day is probably not the right time frame, but every week or once every other week is a good thing. It can be used in any context, right. So towards any goal. So think about it. If you have some health goals, well, what's your mindset around those health goals? What are the strategies that you have, and what are you doing to make it sustainable? So it's just a tool for reflection, and it just gives you a broader range of reflection based on outcome.
So let me just see if we have any questions. If you have questions, by all means. So yeah, this is actually really interesting. From your standpoint, what do you think are the gender specific? I would prefer we use the word sex specific. I just still have this preoccupation that gender is only a grammar phenomenon. But anyway, what do you think the differences are between the expectations that pull on us from either the standpoint of focus and outcome or the standpoint of juggling and automating, or however you both parse your specific interests? What do you think are those differences? And Amanda, why don't you speak to that first?
I was giggling when I saw that comment, but so in my life, my husband is can focus on one thing really, really, really well. And I'll tell him about something and then he'll forget it because he was focusing on the one thing that was in front of him when I told him about the other thing, and so I think the male brain just works differently than the female brain. There's some sort of chemical alignment, wiring, something in there, that is definitely different. And I think it's just different in the way that we care for things or prioritize, maybe. I think that's the best way to put it.
Do you think but you're sort of observing what you see in terms of our brains, but how do you think that alters what the world, what your clients, what your children expect of you versus what they expect of dad?
Ooh, that's a good one. So my husband will be sitting right there, and I know all of the moms can totally relate to this. He will be sitting in the same room with them, and they will come up and interrupt me to ask me for something downstairs. Like, it's just they have a higher expectation of me because there's that attachment that, is a chemical. I truly believe it's a chemical energetic attachment that, they were inside of your body at one point and they're now outside, but that doesn't make too much of a difference,
I wonder, I'm looking at the text and I'm wondering whether Augusto has something different to say about that. Because he says, I'll argue, Julie, that it's not necessarily mom or dad as primary caregiver or not. So I'm not sure whether that's something that he has more to say about. Penny, what do you think about the different expectations by sex? Like, do you feel like that it's different for you than it might be for a sort of corresponding man?
Well, it's a loaded question. We could talk all day, all week,
Well,
and
we
all
have to
year
get more
about
minutes.
this question, right? Yeah, we've got a few minutes.
We're probably one of the few all-women panels today in the conference, so we might as well take advantage.
Yeah, I mean, Julie and I had some discussions actually on my podcast about the gender side of things. I think if I just, there is a general society expectation that's different for women than it is for men. That I do believe that is so, and I think that we have different expectations of ourselves that impact us, so that we don't give ourselves permission to focus on one thing. We're just, we take on that responsibility. And like you said, Amanda, maybe it's because it's our empathy, our caring, our nurturing part of us that takes on not only what we have to do and how we feel, but how everybody feels around us, right? And that then becomes woven into our fabric. So I do think that plays a role, and that means we have to work harder when we really want to give our attention to what's in front of us. I think it, and I can't speak for men, but maybe it's easier for them to do that than it is for us to do that the way that we're wired.
Well, they say that men, by virtue of sort of biological history, are not as hardwired to multitask. And I know that's like saying Othello in the theater, saying multitask at a conference like this. But women do, certainly in the early years with children, hold a child, hold a phone, make dinner. And up until very recently, with gay adoptions and single dads, for the most part, that didn't happen a lot. So that may be part of it, that men have had the benefit of being able to do work with 100% of their focus on that work for much of history. But I'm interested in what Augusto says, that his kids go to him rather than to mom. And I'm curious to know if he has an idea about how that kind of came to be, because that is very unusual. I do think that's very unique. Amanda, you said that, dad could be right there and then your kids would come to you. How do you negotiate that? Because that seems like an area that needs to be kind of negotiated. Like, I'm busy.
Doing, yeah. I'll either say, go ask your dad, or I'll say, or I'll call him if I'm getting ready to do a recording or a meeting or an interview or something, and I'll say, hey, so-and-so did this, they need this, and then he'll be like, I'm right here. Why didn't they ask me? It's just a thing. I don't know. So, but I am also interested in hearing what Augusto has to say. Our family dynamic is a little bit different in that my husband is African. So there is a cultural difference as well. Although he's extremely out of the norm for, African men. But
where in Africa? I mean, Africa's a big place.
Yeah, he's from Cameroon in West Africa.
Okay.
So, but
very
yeah,
interesting.
Some, interesting cultural dynamics, and I've really learned to adapt to him over the years, as well as he's learned to adapt to me. So
that's an interesting point Augusto makes, is that for parents who stay home, they end up in the caregiving role. So if it's dad, then naturally the children come home, and in the days when we had school and stuff, kids would come home and dad is the one that's there, not mom. So there's a lot of it that may just be sort of, behavioral training.
Nature versus nurture, right?
I'm sorry. Yeah. Well, nature and nurture, but certainly a high degree of nurture there, right? Like a Pavlovian training.
Right. We train people how to treat us, right? So it's the same with our kids. If we train them to go to mom and mom always answers the questions and does it, then they'll keep coming to mom. If mom says go to dad, then maybe eventually they'll get the hint that they should go to dad.
Right. No, it's
or do
exactly
it yourself.
right.
I have to say, do it yourself.
Well, your kids are
and
a
I'm
little
a
older.
bad mom.
Well, your kids are a little older. Hers are younger children.
Yeah.
But I have one client that I mean, he's got a very successful business, but of course he's at home at the moment. And he has grown children who have moved back home for various reasons. And they both have some, they're both adopted from Russia, so they have some issues. And he says, like, now that I wake up in the morning, I never get any alone time. And he feels really self-conscious about closing the door to his office or closing the door to the gym when he's on the elliptical, because he's on the elliptical and he's, listening to a podcast or watching CNN or whatever he's doing. And he says, every time somebody walks past, they're like, hey, Dan, what's happening? and he's like, got to be friendly, even though he doesn't want to be. And I can imagine that is quite hard to negotiate, to push back against those expectations, especially when the expectations are friendly and loving. They're not annoying, or they're annoying, but they're not intended to be. Let me pivot a little bit and ask, well, yes, and as Augusto says, they go wherever they can get the right answer. That is true. I do remember that as a kid, like mom said no, so I'd go to dad. Do you have questions for each other? Like, I don't know if you saw each other's presentations, but you have quite different focuses, and I know that I'm not hitting all of the important things. Penny, do you have any questions for Amanda that you think might be interesting?
Didn't come prepared for that. Interesting.
Do you want to?
I have to think about that. Yeah, okay. I don't know.
Amanda, I'll put you on the spot next.
I would love to know, like, in your coaching, how long do you typically work with your clients, and what is your outcome of, working with them, because you're in that coaching productivity space? So.
Well, actually, productivity is extremely broad. Right. So I use that as a term because I think that's what people want to hear. You give them what they, what they need, and then you also give them what they think they need. So I tend to work with people anywhere from 3 months to, I have some clients I've been with for 5 years. And basically we work on whatever outcome is most important for them. So I'm somebody who's very practical. So I always start with, let's do more with what you already have. So I evaluate what there is already in the organization. So productivity would very often start with the CEO and helping them to get out of their own way. So finding out, we do a time study and we find out where they're spending their time and where they need to be spending their time and identify that gap. And then we go into the different strategic areas of their business. It might be lead generation or sales. It might be culture. So it's across the board. So it excuse me, the outcome's dependent on what their outcome is.
What kind of businesses do you work with typically? Here, you want to get a drink of water and we'll go to Amanda real quick?
Yeah, sorry, hopefully I was on mute. I thought I tried to mute myself.
No, but we saw you struggling. We're just concerned. So I want to make you walk through that.
I work with businesses. Typically the businesses that I work with aren't necessarily in any specific industry, but they tend to be sort of that anywhere from like 2 or 3 million to 100 million.
That's a very broad area.
It is. And, I'd love to say my sweet spot is with this type of company, but it depends, right? So every organization is different. What their needs are different. Sometimes I'm only working with, the CEO, and then it really, then it's what's going on for the CEO and where they're driving the business. Sometimes I'm working with the whole management team. So it really depends. And I like it that way, though, because it keeps it very diverse. And I like the diversity. I like working across industries because I get ideas that would be great to implement in, when I see what's going on in advertising or in the business, right? Then it sparks ideas into other areas.
Cool. And do you have any questions you want to ask Amanda? We're getting close to wrapping up, so you don't have to take up. You don't need to fill too much time if you don't want.
I did not get a chance to watch Amanda's presentation yet, but I guess I would say, I like what you talked about the value of time, and how do you advise people to value their time? How they quantify that?
Yeah, so I generally, kind of break it down. You can break it down by hour, but I don't really think that that's a great way to do it because, you might not value your time in hours. But for me, I just pick, like, if I'm going to spend an hour with someone and they're going to be able to ask me anything, like, how much do I think that's worth, And usually I have what is called a pick my brain call. That people can book right off of my website, and they can spend an hour and ask me anything. And I think it's really about figuring out how much that would be worth to them. And, the feedback that I've gotten and those kind of things is how I value that. So it's really hard to put a number on it, but, I think you need to, whatever you think it is, then add a little bit more, because that's probably what it is. That's probably what it should be.
Let me ask you a follow-up question from that, Amanda, because you said you do these 15-minute assessments, or 15 was in there. I don't know. Anyway, these free assessments, basically. And that clearly takes you some time to do.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you square the free assessment, which takes up your own alone thoughtful time, with the need to make sure that you don't give away your time for free? Is it purely a cost of doing business as lead gen?
Yeah, those calls are highly effective. So usually, like, maybe 1 to 2 out of 4 calls, results in some sort of monetary, exchange, like a service exchange. So for me, they're highly fruitful. If I spend 15 minutes and I book a client that's like a $300 management client per month for a year, that's a really good investment of 15 minutes. You know what I mean? So
do you actually put them in your balance sheet? Like, that just cost me, let's say, $100 in time. So so the net out of the $300 a month is $200 for the first month, or amortized over time. Sorry, I'm a little bit nerdy.
I am not math accounting. Like, my brain, when you say math, it just goes out the window. Like, I don't do that. Like, I kind of think about it in my head of, like, as an investment, an investment of time. Is it worth it to do these 15-minute calls?
Like, what I really want to know is, does this go in your does it go in your tax return? Anyway, thank you both so much. It's been a wonderful conversation, and we're going to go straight to the closing session with Francis, and then, of course, there will be networking after that. So I hope anybody who was here who wants to have a personal exchange with you or Francis or me will hang around for all that time. Go get a beer or a glass of wine, or in my case, a vodka, and come back and stick around to the end. And Francis, I don't know how, but I think I give it to you now.
Yes, you do. Thank you all. Thank you all so much. Penny, Amanda, and me, we really enjoyed this in-depth conversation. It's fascinating. So I'm going to turn off the recording and ask you if you could turn off your cameras and your microphones. And I'll come and take us through the closing session for this evening. So, day 2. So the purpose of our time together today is basically to close the day out on a strong note, so that nothing left behind, nothing left unsaid. And the way we'll do that is by doing a quick recap of what happened today. I'll ask you, what are some of the things that you discovered today? What were some of the nuggets you're taking away? We'll go through tomorrow's schedule, give you a little peek about what's happening, and then we'll go straight into a networking session where we can talk and chat with each other. And let's start with the recap. So let's grab my schedule for today. Today we started off with Mike Slowinski, our surprise sponsor. And of course, if he's listening in, thanks to him and his team for sponsoring the conference. And then we went into a Q&A a couple of Q&As in the early morning. We had Mike continue on with Dr. Frank Buck, facilitated by Augusto. And then we went into a conversation with Renee and Augusto, which was facilitated by Mike Vardy. After the break, we came back to a panel with Matt, Heather, and Susan, a Q&A that Penny led with Graham and Simona from the UK and Italy. And now we're just completing the final Q&A of the evening of the day with me facilitating Amanda and Penny. So it's been a day of a lot of learning. And of course, there are all the pre-recorded and the different content that you've been listening to. I know there is folks in the UK in particular who have, and parts of Italy, the EU, who have been tuning into and downloading because they are able to do so. We'll put up the downloads tonight so that they can get them when they are basically early this morning, their time. And just glad to be of service to them. And also, we've had people interacting on the platform. So there's like a whole set of conversations happening around the content that we're engaged in here on the Mighty Networks, Mighty Taskers platform. So now that makes up the 3 different legs of our conference that folks are engaged in. But let me turn this over to you. I'm really interested to hear what are you walking away with from the sessions that we had today? What are the nuggets of learning that you are taking away? What's been reinforced? What's been new? What's been opening up? What insights did you gather? Let's hear. And once again, I don't want you just to try to share the big stuff like, oh my goodness, my life changed, it's a transformation, but share even the smallest kind of moments for you, because others will benefit from your sharing as well. Just go ahead and put that in the chat. Terry. Oh my goodness. Terry. Oh, whoa. Baptism by fire. Because this is a great Q&A that you walked into, just hearing just a little piece of it. Great to have you, Terry. I had never heard the concept of a body double, even though apparently I've been doing that. And the body double that I think Dale mentioned that I use is I turn on coffee-tivity, which it allows you to pipe in the sounds of a coffee shop in the background. And I found about 20 years ago that I sometimes got anxious when I worked alone. And working just with someone in the next room was different than working in just by myself at home. Of course, coffee-tivity makes me feel like I have all kinds of people who care about what I'm doing when it's just coffee shop noise. It's great. Julie, break out that notebook and share with us some of what's in it, por favor. Me, the different people order their days depending on their goals, nature of their work, and their home lives. Right. One of the key aspects of this summit is that there is no right way to do time blocking. And there's a kind of insight you need to bring to your time blocking that will allow you to schedule your days so that it's not just about producing the most widgets, but being fulfilled, being balanced, accomplishing short-term goals, accomplishing long-term goals, taking care of your relationships, your spirituality, basically living an entire life. The world isn't structured to give us whole and complete and balanced lives. It's something that we've got to claim for ourselves. And maybe that's the subtext of everything that's happened so far in the last 2 days. Body doubling is common in the professional organizing community. And okay, great. FocusMate, 3 free sessions per week. What's FocusMate, Terry? Could you tell us some more? Can't read our writing. Different perspectives. Right. In my case, I need the quiet, and I like the company. I like quiet company. I think my mom is the same way. Trevor says, schedule a block of transition time as if you're commuting, by Susan. Yes, great. People with executive function challenges can have a harder time getting started, but once they're in it, it's easier to keep going. Interesting. Task managers have moved from a single view to managing tasks via multiple views by Matt. Create FocusMate is a platform for co-working for two people. A type of body doubling for accounting, for being accountable. I'm thinking you don't mean accounting in the debits and credits sense, perhaps, but in the being accountable to somebody else sense. Each person's working on their own project for 15-minute sessions. Check it. Okay, so it's like a co-working space. Interesting. I've never tried that before. I know Ray actually offers co-working, and he's going to be with us tomorrow morning. So let's actually get into tomorrow morning's. You can go ahead and put some more comments in there. I'm just going to pull up tomorrow's schedule. And I think I mentioned that there's a bit of something I want to emphasize for tomorrow. It's a little bit unique. Trevor says you can't effectively step back from interacting with others until you have a plan for when you'll step back. Yes. Terry, Personal Productivity Club is an online community built on the same platform that ours is built on, in the same technology. That one is hosted by Ray Sidney Smith, who'll be with us tomorrow morning for most of the morning, actually in the afternoon as well. Augusto is dropping the link in. It covers a wide range of personal productivity topics. Here at Mighty Taskers, we really only cover one topic, which is task management. Okay, what else? All right, guys, so let's take a look at tomorrow's schedule, and I have something I want to share with you. So tomorrow, Ray and I are kicking off together at 11 o'clock. So it's tomorrow. You can get to sleep in for a whole extra half an hour. Whee! So Ray will be with me for a portion of the opening session. And then between 11:30 and 12:30, I'll be handing over to him and me. But really to Ami. Ami is going to be facilitating a conversation between Nicole and Ray based on their presentations. And at 12:30, actually, let me just put up Ray's session and one of Nicole's sessions. This is Ray's session coming up so that you know why you should get up at 11. Put everything aside and come back and catch that session. And here's Nicole's session. Okay, and how many of you caught this? I think I have it queued up as a video. No, I don't. Hold on a second. I want to share with you a video. How many of you caught this video? Okay, I just flip that off. Let's see what happens next. Okay, great. Anyone see that video? I had a real was this for real moment when I watched the video. Did anyone download and see it today? Or actually, it's tomorrow. Sorry, it's in tomorrow's list, not today's list. It's in tomorrow's list. But I'm going to drop the link in the chat before we're done. But this is a group of high school students. And what I want to tell you is that you don't want to miss the interview tomorrow at 12:30 with Ray Sidney. Ray Sidney Smith, our own Ray, is interviewing. I think it's three of them are showing up for the interview. 2 or 3 of them are showing up tomorrow for our live interview. The video that they've offered is only 14 minutes long. I really recommend that you watch it and that you come prepared to with questions and with whatever is in your mind. What are they feeding these kids in? What's in the water in San Francisco that would allow a group of high school kids to even begin a video like that? And I can tell you, it's very much worth listening to the entire thing. So I'll drop it in the chat. But let me tell you, I have an all access pass to give away, and this is a giveaway for the speakers as well. Who can tell me the 4 members of the Conducion team that were at the start of that video? First person to put the 4 members of the team, it flashed up very briefly in the chat, gets an all access pass worth $249. All right, the person who comes the closest. I won't accept 2 names. Anyone who can say all 4 names first or 3 names. That's one. Can anyone say 3 names? Julie. So this is a test. I'm not gonna give an all access pass unless someone has at least 3 names. Because this today and yesterday, in the setup, I said, guys, I want you to focus when you're in the conference, to focus on the conference. Is no one up to getting, there's like 1.5 names that are out there so far based on the answers that you gave so far. No one yet. Oh, okay, so this is a strike. This is a strike 1. No, I told you to watch the video. All right, so their names are, so there's no award of the all access pass. I'm going to save this all access pass and give it tomorrow night at tomorrow's closing session. So their names are Micah, Hojun, Huxley, and Zach. So you got, somebody said Zach, that was like the spelling was off. But anyway, so guys, the point is, I'm gonna have to type the name if that's the Micah. I know I'm probably typing this wrong. Anyway, I part of my wanting to get the names into your heads in this kind of unique way is that there really could be a Bill Gates in this group. I can tell you from the video that I saw. There could be another Zuckerberg, another Mark Zuckerberg hanging out in this group, because I'll just have you take a look at it and see for yourself, and you guys decide. But the rest of the agenda, let me just pull that back up because it scrolled off the screen. So they'll be with Ray for an hour, and there'll be a lunch break. It'll be a bit of a shorter lunch break. We'll come back for a panel with Dan Markovitz. Gabriella actually won't be in that. Let me tell you who is replacing Gabriella. Oh, it's Augusto, right? So Augusto is going to be replacing Gabriella in that panel about the future of task management. And I suspect that after seeing the video of Conducion and hearing their live interview, we might revise our thoughts about the future of task management. And then we will have a Q&A moderated, not by Jamie. Jamie is actually out. She's not well, but she's recovering rather well. She's doing okay, but she was ill, so she's not with us at the conference. Ray Sidney Smith will be moderating a session between Trevor and me. And finally, Julie Bestry will be moderating a session between Jim McCullen and Olga Colmenares. And that's our day for tomorrow. It is shaping up, guys. It is shaping up to be an interesting day. And are there any questions about what's going to get accomplished tomorrow at this point? Augusto said, I couldn't forget that, Augusto. Great. Stick around to the end. Yeah, this is going to take off. I'm not kidding. Yes, it's running on Eastern time zone. Terry, where are you at? All the time zones are on Eastern. Minnesota, great. Okay, so not Australia. We have some folks from Australia who are having a tough time attending the live sessions, as you could imagine. All right, guys, any questions before we call it and move into the networking, informal, vodka, tonic, gin? Any questions, any comments before we hit the eject button? Heather asks, with the all access pass, do we have to wait a week to see yesterday's pre-recorded videos? Yeah, no. Pre-recorded videos will be uploaded before the live videos. So answer Heather is no. We'll start uploading them probably on Monday. And we'll start by uploading the pre-recorded videos first because they're the ones that are finished. It's the live videos that take time because they're stored in the cloud at the moment. They have to be downloaded, they have to be processed, they have to be uploaded. There's a whole process. But the answer is yes. We can set it up so that you can get access from about midweek, or if you don't want to wait until it's all done, you can actually get access as we go along. Yeah, the Monday videos wouldn't be available in the regular conference, right? Okay. Any other questions? Great question. No other questions. Okay, let's go over and enjoy each other's company in networking mode. There's no assignment in particular other than what did you get from watching today? What stood out for you? What was interesting? What did you not like? What did you really like? It's all fair game. And I'll be hanging around for at least until 6:30, which is about 10 minutes time if anyone wants to grab me for any questions. If not, I'm going to hit the eject button. See you tomorrow morning at 11. You can get to sleep in, guys. 11 a.m. tomorrow morning. Don't miss tomorrow, no matter what you do. And here we go. We are ejecting from presentation mode into networking mode. And if it's your first time in networking mode, real quick, you're going to end up at a table. And to change tables, you can just double click on a different table. When you're at a table, you're in a private chat with the people at your table. Turn on your microphone and your camera, and you can also do text chatting the way we are here, just to communicate with them. Okay, so let's go meet some people. I'm going to be bouncing around the room. Take care, guys. See you tomorrow, 11 o'clock Eastern time. Oh, Terry, just hold on to your chair. We're all going to go there together right now.